This is my video on Alfred Waterhouse, who was a famous Victorian architect who I am related to.
This is me. This is my dad. This is my granddad. This is my great-granddad. This is my great-great-granddad. This is my great-great-great-granddad, Alfred Waterhouse.
Here I am at the Natural History Museum. Alfred Waterhouse is the most famous building.
We're going to see the wonderful university of dinosaurs in there as well. If you'd like to support the museum, please give us a donation.
Alfred Waterhouse used terracotta tiles and statues to cover the building. This had not been done before in London, and he got the idea in Italy. I never realised the terracotta creatures on the west side are living creatures and plants, and the ones on the east side are extinct creatures and plants.
Here we are in the Great Hall. Oh my gosh, look at these ducks. Those are drawn by him, the man. Look at this. I have no idea what it is, but it's awesome. All these terracotta creatures are all drawn and sketched by Alfred, including all the monkeys and
Alfred drew at least 202 sketches of the terracotta creatures, and it was revealed that a man called Monsieur du Jardin was responsible for crafting all these detailed sketches in terracotta. Monkeys, 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 the monkeys here, monkeys, monkeys, monkeys here.
Alfred Waterhouse lived in the village of Yattendon in a house he built called Yattendon Court. My Aunt Liz was born there, so I decided to go and interview her. Do you remember Yattendon?
Well, I never saw the house that Alfred built because it was called the Court, and he built it, and he and Elizabeth lived there, and they had lots of visitors, and I've only heard about it from my grandfather and grandmother. One thing I remember was that Elizabeth made all the guest bedrooms, and she gave them all names, and she gave them names of the good qualities that people have from the Bible, so things like joy and patience and peace.
Do you know why Yattendon Court was demolished or ripped down?
I do. My grandfather, Michael, had to sell the court and the land, and the people who bought it were a family of newspaper owners, businessmen, and they were very modern and forward-looking, and by that time they didn't want something that was Victorian because they thought it was old-fashioned and they didn't like it, and they pulled it all down. Alfred's wife Elizabeth they were both very busy in the village of Yattendon, and they were very concerned about the people in Yattendon because they were just ordinary workers in the village. They didn't have anything to do except go to the pub, and a lot of the time they got drunk, and Alfred and Elizabeth didn't think that was a great idea, so they did lots of things. They built a whole building called the Reading Room, which was like a library, and you could go there and just have a cup of tea and read the newspaper and chat. So it was a meeting place that was different from the pub. And also Elizabeth set up a workshop and classes to teach people to work with copper, which this is made of, and she taught them how to warm the copper and bang it with a hammer to make these designs, and they made these beautiful things. This is a huge jug, and they were sold at posh London shops like Liberty's and at exhibitions, and they exported them all over the world. So that's called Yattendon copper.
This painting that we're standing in front of, this was drawn by Alfred Waterhouse, is that correct?
That's right. And that is what we call a perspective, and he would have drawn that before the building was built, when he designed it, and he didn't have a CAD design computer program. He had to imagine what it would look like, and so he would make a painting to show the clients. And this building, the Kingsway House Chapel in Duke Street, is still there in London, and you can go and see it, but it's got modern buildings all the way around it. Yeah, he was a really good draftsman and artist, and probably he would like to have been an artist, but because of the family that he grew up in, they thought being an artist wasn't a very good career, and you needed to do something a bit more solid than that, and that's why he became an architect, I think. One of the things we know about him being a really good artist is that your granny, Jessie, has in her house in London, she's got the sketchbooks, and everywhere he went he carried his little sketchbook in his pocket, and the sketchbooks are full of beautiful drawings of things that he saw. Just anything that he liked he would draw, and they go for about 50 years he kept these sketchbooks.
I'm going to visit my grandma now. Do you have any information about the sketchbooks?
Well, each one has a year on it. And when he went travelling in the summer, he would always have a sketchbook in his pocket, and anything that caught his eye, he would immediately sit down and sketch it.
Do you know how many sketchbooks he had or did?
I think 14, we can check in a minute.
And how did they come here in the house?
Because they went to Alfred's son Paul and Paul's son Michael and Michael's son David, who was your grandfather, and now I've got them.
Okay. So, did he only sketch buildings?
No, he would sketch whatever caught his eye as being of interesting design. It could be buildings, bits of buildings, tree, a lady's bonnet.
It must have taken, if he goes to a walk, say going as long as from our house to the common, it must have taken a long time, because they just were like, whoa.
Well, you could do it because actually there are several different types of doorways, for instance, when you walk up that street to the park. I've noticed them just because I happen to go on architectural history walks where I get pointed out to me, so I look for them on other streets. And if you're really good, it means you can tell what sort of person these houses were built for.
So we're surrounded by all these beautiful paintings, so do you have anything about them?
Well, when he made enough money to take longer holidays, then he would go and paint instead of just sketching. So every summer he painted.
Was he a well-known painter as well as an architect?
He certainly was. He was a member of the Royal Academy, and he exhibited there every year in their show.
That was so interesting learning all about my relative. I hope you learned a lot.